Ladies and gents, welcome back to the Football Insomniac podcast. I'm your host, Colin Watt, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Bauer, Clyde 1 and Dunfermline Athletics' Stephen Mill. It's a voice you've probably heard, but it's time to put a picture to that voice. Stephen, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, Colin. Thanks for having me on. Sorry to disappoint you with the face and the voice not being up to scratch, but I guess that's just the perks of working in radio. You can look like this and you can still get a job. That's totally fine.
You're an inspiration to all of us, Stephen. I mean, unfortunately, we've got to come on here and show our faces, but yeah, I would love to hide behind the mask of the radio. But yeah, we'll be discussing a lot to do with the international football. We're into this international break just now. 3 games coming up in the space of a week. It's a lot of football to for everyone to try and catch up on. Not as if there's not enough football going on at the minute. We're now fitting into the international games. We'll also be taking a look at the television deal for the Women's Football League down south. £7 million a year for the next 3 years. Is that a better deal than what Scotland gets? The Dream Dinner Party will make its return, and also Stephen will be giving us an insight into his career in journalism and his new show with Ewan Cameron, someone that he took great pleasure in winding up this morning as we touch on one of our first topics, which was the biggest shock in Scottish Cup history. It's going down as Brora Rangers 2, Hearts 1. What was your first reaction when you saw that result coming through last night?
Brilliant, loved it. Loved stuff like that, and the fact that it winds up Ewan Cameron is obviously an added bonus. But like, just to start with, you know, Brora are not a bad side, and you know, had the playoffs gone on last year, the pyramid playoffs, they would have played Celtic Hearts, who won the Lowland League last season, or were leading the Lowland League last season. And, you know, that would have been a tough match between the two of them, and whoever would have won would have got promoted. They would have beaten Brecon or Albion Rovers, whoever it was that finished bottom of League Two. So Brora are a decent outfit. In saying that, there is no way that Hearts should be getting beat by Brora Rangers. I mean, the money that Hearts are spending, obviously, you know, they didn't have Craig Gordon last night because he's on international duty, but the fact that, you know, a championship side have got international players says it all. And I think, you know, absolutely amazing result for Brora, and you know, you've got a decent chance of getting through to the next round, because I think they play Stranraer next, and Stranraer are a decent side for that level, but there's no reason why Brora can't go on and beat Stranraer in the next round, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in the quarterfinals. So I mean, that's wild. It's just brilliant, and the fact that Ewan Cameron's greeting is even better.
And he's not even got his late night chat show to bring it up, which he takes great pleasure in.
They watch that
anyway. But I mean, as a Dunfermline fan, you've seen this season what Hearts have done in the Championship. They're absolutely running away with it. So a result like that, is that really the biggest cup upset in Scottish football history?
I think so, yeah, because, you know, I was reading last night that Hearts haven't lost a competitive game to a non-league side since 1900. So, like, it's an absolutely terrible result for Hearts. And, you know, you say that Hearts are running away with the Championship. Yes, they are. But I think that probably says more about the rest of the Championship, more than Hearts, to be honest with you. Hearts are all right for a Championship team. But, you know, the standard this season is not good. And, you know, Dundee have spent a lot of money this season. You've got guys like Jason Cummings, Charlie Adams is in there as well. And, you know, like the other team, like in my own team, Dunfermline, obviously not big spenders, but I feel that it's a bit of an opportunity missed to try and put a wee bit more pressure on Hearts, because, you know, they haven't been very good, but unfortunately the rest of the Championship have been even worse.
I mean, you take a look at that championship, it's always one of the most fiercely contested leagues. I think between, is it 9th and 2nd, there's only about 8 points in it. And being a Greenock boy, I see Morton's fortunes this season, and Morton's probably a sole topic as well because Dunfermline get knocked out by Morton last night.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch the match, but, my mates were on the group chat and they were just saying this is one of the worst games of football I've ever seen in my life. So I got put out on penalties. It's been disappointing since Crawford's come in. Our cup success has been terrible. In the Scottish Cup, League Cup's been decent, but Scottish Cup, first year we got put out by Wraith Rovers, who were the league below us. We got put out by Stranraer last year, who were a league below us, and hadn't won a game all season as well. And then we got put out by Morton last night. Now, obviously, there's no massive shame in getting put out by Morton because they're in the same league as us, and as I say, the championship is really tight. Everyone can beat everyone, so I think. It's just disappointing because, as a fan of a Diddy team, it's good to get a cup run now and again because, it's our only chance of getting to Hampden. So, just really disappointed with the result last night. But I guess we can try and concentrate on getting into those playoffs and hopefully getting promoted.
Yeah, and as you said, I mean, it is the dream to get that sort of Scottish Cup run. You don't see it that often with the teams that are below the Premiership. I do remember Morton made the semi-final of the League Cup a couple of years ago, and it felt as if the town just emptied. Everyone just made their way to Hampden, and that's part of the joy of a smaller team getting there, is you get the whole community spirit. You saw it there with the League Cup final just a couple of weeks ago, St Johnstone versus Livingston. It was as if the whole towns were getting so involved in it, and that's part of the joy of cup football. It's a 90-minute game, anything can happen, and in this case, Brora can beat Hearts. It's incredible. And I tell you what, for anyone that looks forward to a full dissection of this, the guys on the Play On podcast on the State of Mind are all big Hearts fans. That's on Monday night. Make sure you tune in and see what they've got to say about that one. I'm sure they'll have some few choice words to be said on that. But yeah, so I agree with you. And as a Celtic fan, I'm absolutely delighted that Hearts have came and taken the title away for the biggest cup upset in Scottish football history.
Is that a Clyde one, yeah?
Clyde or Inverness, take your pick.
I suppose, yeah. I think the Clyde one was probably worse.
We'll go with Clyde. Before we move on to the next topic, I just want to take this opportunity just to put a kind of serious point across here. Everyone in football was absolutely horrified to see the scenes that happened last Thursday night. Sorry, apologies, I'm suffering with a bit of a cold today. In the Europa League game at Ibrox, the alleged, and you have to say alleged here because there's still a lot of investigation ongoing, racist abuse that Glenn Kamara received on the park last week was completely abhorrent. There was no place in football for that. Scotland as a country has experienced not just racism, sectarianism, and all different forms of kind of segregation over the years. And I think as a country we do try our best to eradicate this from society. And when things like this flare up, what was great to see was it was a united approach from all teams. All teams had the backing of Glenn Kamara, and you saw it even more so with the Celtic Rangers game at the weekend. Scott Brown approaching him, and Celtic showing their solidarity. Stephen, it's something that we have to eradicate from the Scottish game, because how can we go on to promote it on an international stage when incidents like this are still happening?
Yeah, totally agree with what you said there. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you see it more with social media now, unfortunately. You see people who, are anonymous and therefore think they can say what they want and say some horrendous things, like, obviously the Marcus Rashford stuff that happened outside. Ian Wright as well recently. It's just I just don't know what goes through people's heads when they do stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, I just hope that UEFA find a wee bit of a backbone and deal with it properly. Unfortunately, with the banner that the Slavia Prague supporters put up, obviously absolutely horrendous. And, even their chairman came out and said that as well, after much prompting, probably. But, I don't see what UEFA are actually going to do about this. I don't know what they can do about it. It's easy to sit here and say, chuck Slavia Prague out, which would be which would be the normal thing to do. But I don't know if they can actually do that. That is the problem. And it all comes back to clubs taking a bit of responsibility as well. I think to give credit to both Celtic and Rangers over the last few years, certainly a concerted effort has been made to try and tackle sectarianism and bigotry within their support. I think, much more so than there was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. It is different days. And but then you go on social media and I follow Celtic and Rangers supporters, and you see what they come out with on a derby day like that.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It really is a difficult one. I don't have the answers. I'm not a politician, but I think it's something that needs to be. It needs to be a far bigger conversation. And stuff like that happens last week. It's just horrendous, and it was great to see what Scott Brown did on Sunday as well.
And that was the good side of it. You obviously, as you just mentioned, you see the ugly side on social media, and it's like people that come out and say, I stand behind Glenn Kamara. And then in the next instance, they're having a go at someone's religion, or they're having a go at someone else. And it's like, look, you can't have any of this whataboutery. You can't have any of this, I stand for one thing but not another. You have to eradicate it completely. And that's the problem, I think, in the Scottish society, is we need to adapt as a country. And all the best wishes, actually, to Marvin Bartley, who's now taking this on. I mean... He's got a voice. He's on BBC Sports Sound. He obviously still plays. And it'll be interesting to see what he tries to bring into Scottish football to stop this. Teams have stopped taking the knee. Do you think that's the right decision?
Well, asking me the easy questions. To be honest, it's difficult. It's, we're two white guys sitting here talking about something that doesn't affect us. So, I'm always a wee bit wary of trying to put across what I think the right idea is when, it's not something that I've had to deal with because I am white and, I'm a male. I've got all these privileges that other people don't. And I think that the taking the knee, I think obviously the Scotland team aren't taking the knee this week. And I think if it's for the players, it's for the black players to decide how they want to approach this. I think that's it's not for us. It's not for anyone else to say what we should and shouldn't do. It's how they would like to take a stand, and for us to get behind it. I think.
Yeah, that was the kind of thoughts that I saw definitely between my friends group, my family, and people that I follow on social media was whatever. And especially with the kind of derby game at the weekend there, whatever Glenn Kamara wanted to do, that's what Celtic had to do to show their solidarity with him. And that's what they've done. So I think you're right. It comes down to the individual, what they believe in, and it's up to us, as you said, as in the privileged position to support their actions. And I think that was great to see Scottish football doing that at the weekend. So, yeah, as you said, we stand against this. We've brought this up on the Insomniac several times, and it just seems to be every week you see a news story where it's a player from a BAME background that gets abuse. And it's not just players. I spoke with Anthony Joseph from Sky Sports, one of the very few BAME journalists in UK football, and he told me about times that he got it on a regular basis as well. So it's something we do have to eradicate from football, and hopefully the first steps are being made now, and maybe in a couple of years' time we'll look back on this and just remember how terrible it was. So just wanted to kind of put that out there. But moving on to the topic that you do see across the bottom of your screen, we are going to be talking about the return of international football. Fans either love or hate international football. Stephen, you're on the love side, aren't you?
Yeah, I love the international break. it's just something different. And, I've followed Scotland for years and years, managed to go to a few away matches as well. I really look forward to the international break, even when we were rubbish. So it's even better.
So right up until about 2 years ago then.
Pretty much, but I think it takes on a different slant now. We have the Euros to look forward to in the summer, and these 3 matches are important. They're big, important matches, and we want to be regularly qualifying for tournaments. And the group that we're in, we've got a decent chance. They're decent teams, Austria and Denmark, but I would fancy us at home to take stuff off them, and if results go our way elsewhere, we've got a decent chance of at least getting into the playoffs, I think. So it's important that we kick off a positive result against Austria at home on Thursday tomorrow night.
And it was a bit of I wouldn't say a bombshell as such, but it was a bit of a surprise that Austria were now able to pick their Bundesliga players. That seemed to be the thing that Scotland fans were getting most excited about, was Austria were coming in with almost their B team. It was the game that kicked off the group stage. It was a big chance to get 3 points on the board. Do you think that offers a different perspective now that they can call on guys like David Alaba into the side?
Well, obviously it's going to make it more difficult, yeah, but I'd rather play Austria at full strength and beat them. I mean, that's what I would want. And also remember the Czech Republic game that we played last year, and it was the Czech Republic B team. We struggled past them. So there's no guarantees with Scotland that even if we're playing a weakened team, that it's going to be any easier. So listen, we just need to take what is in front of us and prepare for the best Austria side that they can put out, and hopefully we're strong at home, and Steve Clarke has a certain way of playing. It's not very pretty, but it does get results, and really solid. I know the couple of games after we qualified, weren't as great, but they still weren't terrible performances. We just probably didn't get the rub of the green that we did against Serbia, and we didn't play that was what we did against Serbia. But I think, as I said before, Austria have some decent players, but so do we. We have some decent players who are playing at the top level, and there's no reason why we can't go into these games looking for all 3 points, especially because it's at Hampden as well. It's just unfortunate that the fans can't be there to see it.
Yeah, and we are live at the minute on Facebook, on YouTube and on Periscope, and that's where Barca Boy finds us, saying the best part of international football is seeing young players develop through the ranks. Now, the one person that's kind of drawn a lot of attention over this international period is the return of Zlatan Ibrahimovic to Sweden. Now, he's not exactly young, although he'll probably say he is at 39 years old. He retired originally in 2016. Sweden faced Georgia in their first group stage game. Tomorrow night it is, actually. 116 games, 62 goals. What is it for Zlatan that makes him want to come back? Is he wanting that final crack at a World Cup? Do you think he could actually win it for Sweden?
Well, I mean, I think it's just he probably feels within himself like it's different. Like, players are playing to a much older age and look after themselves so much better. I mean, you look at the nick of Ronaldo, and he's 35, 36 or whatever he is now. He's in absolutely prime condition almost. Zlatan's game was never about pace. It was never about getting in behind. He was a big, strong guy. He didn't have much pace to lose, really. And the fact that he's in such great shape, he probably thinks that he can come back and still be comfortably Sweden's best striker, which, I'm not an expert on Swedish football, but I would imagine that Ibrahimovic is still the best that they've got. So, they're probably happy to have him back as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He's got, I think it's 16 goals in 21 games for Milan. Now, when you're scoring goals at that kind of level, you can definitely do it on the international stage, especially against a team like Georgia. I'd be surprised if he doesn't add to that tally tomorrow night. And then, Zlatan will be Zlatan. He'll go on and proclaim how he's the best person in the world, and he'll be linked with moves to Barcelona and Real Madrid in the summer. That's just the way it goes.
Probably, yeah. I didn't realise that he'd been having such a good season at Milan as well. But that's incredible at 39 years old, and he's a phenomenal talent. And I mean, if he was Scottish, I'd want him in the squad, put it that way.
We did a story, I think it was about 2 months ago now, about a player in Japan, King Kazu, who's still playing at 52 years old. I think that's Zlatan's goal. I think Zlatan wants carried off the park. That's him. And he'll still say he's the best in the world at likes of 45, 46. And if he keeps scoring that amount of goals, who's going to argue against him?
I know, totally. And as I say, players can play longer now because people, the game's far more professional than what it was even 20, 30 years ago. And as I said, Ronaldo looks like he's going to go on forever as well. And, Zlatan could probably go to about the age of 50 as well. I mean, he's just an absolute specimen.
I can't believe we're going to be talking about Zlatan in 10 years' time. That's going to be a quite interesting thought. Well, what we are going to do is we're going to take a look at Scotland, England, Wales and Northern Ireland over the next 7 days, the teams that they're going to face. I'll give you my predictions of how many points they're going to pick up, and Stephen will do the same. First of all, let's take a look at Scotland and the inclusion of Che Adams into the side. Did Scotland just become more appealing because there was a place at stake in the European squad, or do you think this was always something that he was kind of vying towards?
Probably, yeah, if we're being honest. I think that that's definitely a carrot to be dangled in front of your face. He's not going to play for England, so I think his granddad that's Scottish or something like that.
I think so. Yeah,
Scottish.
Yeah,
and he was raised in England. I think his mum or dad. I think his dad maybe is from the Caribbean or something like that. So it's no wonder he didn't feel Scottish, because why would he? So listen, I think that it's great. I've seen quite a few people moaning their chops off about it on social media. These sort of weird, thoroughbred Scottish-only players. This isn't the 1990s. We aren't we live in a different world now, and I think that sort of outlook on things is a bit weird, to be perfectly honest with you, and people like that need to grow up. I'm very much behind Che Adams. Anyone who pulls on the Scotland jersey gets my full support, and if he wants to come in and score the winner against England in the Euros, then he's an absolute hero as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, I totally understand that thought. I just don't want us to go down the route of someone's drank a can of Iron Brew and suddenly gets a call up to Scotland. The way we were almost going under the sort of Betty Vokes era, and a couple of years after that when guys like Craig McHale-Smith were getting called up to the squad. But no, Che Adams, at least you're attracting someone of a Premiership talent this time. I think Craig McHale-Smith was still playing in League One for Peterborough at the time. He was definitely doing someone in the Scottish Premiership out of that chance in the squad. And speaking about players in the Scottish Premiership, someone that having seen him play for Dunfermline, Kevin Nisbet, gets a call up. Are you excited to see what he can do? Do you think he'll get a chance?
Yeah, brilliant. Kevin's a really nice guy. He's had a really tough year. His dad passed away earlier on this year, and you might have seen some of the interviews that he's done recently. And, Kevin Nisbet is going to be a very, very, very good striker. Whether it's this time, I'm not entirely sure. But I remember speaking to somebody in the game probably about a year and a half ago, and I was talking to him about Kevin Nisbet, and he was like, he is, because I was comparing him and Shankland basically, and he was like, Nisbet's a far better player than Shankland, and at that time, well, you kind of would say that, but it's actually proven to be true. He's a far, far better player than Shankland. And I like Shankland, he's a total poacher, but Nisbet's got so much more to his game. He's strong, he's quick, both feet, good in the air, can hold the ball up really well, he's clever, he makes good runs. I think that he will be away in the summer. I think he'll leave Hibs definitely, but he will leave them with a massive transfer fee, especially if he can get in that Euro squad as well. That'll add a few pounds, and obviously as a Dunfermline fan, I know there's a hefty sell-on clause coming in March, so the bigger the better as far as I'm concerned with Kevin Nisbet. He's a lovely guy, and I hope he gets his chance. And he's a goal scorer. He just scores goals. So that's something that we've needed and we need going forward. So he's definitely somebody that I have been calling for to be in the squad for certainly the last sort of 6 months or so. And I think that it's good that he's got his chance now.
And when you take a look at the attacking options for Scotland, obviously we just spoke about Che Adams, Kevin Nisbet, Lon Shankland, and the other name that's on there, and we'll try and keep this one brief. Ollie McBurney, is he good enough to play for Scotland?
No, he's not. I don't think he's very good at football, to be perfectly honest with you. I've watched football for a long time, and I just don't see what he adds. I've seen him for Sheffield United. I've seen him for Scotland. I guess he's a sort of backup for Dykes. Mm-hmm. That's probably why he's in the squad. And, he's been in the squad consistently, and I think Clark does have a bit of loyalty to his players. But no, I don't think he's good enough. It'll be interesting to see what he does next season when Sheffield United get relegated. He might, kick on in the Championship. You never know, but he just looks like he looks like he's just ran on the park and he's never played football before. Sometimes I don't get it. I don't get why anyone would spend £20 million on Ollie McBurney.
I'm asking a serious question to everyone that's watching here. Who would score more goals in the Premiership? Ali Dia or Ollie McBurney? My money's on Dia.
I think so, yeah, I think so. I guess, and he doesn't help himself with he got caught with the comments saying that he hates international football, hates going away with Scotland and that. Well, fine, don't come then. I don't care. That obviously turns people against him as well. And yeah, he's young and he'll say stupid stuff. So I get that. And I'm not haranguing him for that. I'm haranguing him for the fact that his performances for Scotland, and he's had plenty of opportunities as well now, have just not been good enough.
Yeah, and that's backed up here by Anthony Patrick Aitken, who basically just says he's mince. That sums it up.
He is mince. And I remember I was covering Super Scoreboard. I think it would have been 2019, and it was when the internationals was on. Gordon was off, and I think it was Alex Ray was speaking, and he was going through the striking options just like you were doing just now. Yeah. He said Ollie McBurney, and I sort of made a face, and he was like, "Oh well, you can make that face, but he's playing with shit." And I'm like, he's just not very good. He can't win the ball in the air. He's not very good at holding it up. His link-up play is terrible, and he can't score. So, I don't see what he adds to the party, to be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah, and let's just clear this up, because this is an argument we see on social media all the time. It's not because he's a Rangers fan. He's just terrible at football. Yes. He's terrible.
It's nothing to do with that. And, until a few months ago, I wasn't even aware that he supported Rangers. And this was long before I made my judgment on Ollie McBurney. So, yeah, he's just not very good. And if we go into the if something horrible happens to Lyndon Dykes and he gets an injury, I know he's not been in great form for QPR, but he did score at the weekend. But if something bad happens to Dykes and he picks up an injury, or Che Adams or whatever, the thought of going into the Euros with Ollie McBurney as our striker absolutely fills me with dread. We'll just have to 0-0 our way to the final.
I mean, when you look at the position of Sheffield United in the league table, it doesn't surprise you that they've got both Ollie McBurney and Ollie Burke in that squad. That's all you need to say. So, I mean, just before we take a look at the games that's coming up, the one surprise exclusion for me was David Turnbull. Do you think he will be still in Steve Clarke's thoughts ahead of the Euros, because he is having a fantastic season?
100%. I think that Clarke knows what David Turnbull can do. I think if you look at this squad, there's a lot of players like Nisbet he wants to take a look at. I think he knows what Turnbull will do, and I fully expect that David Turnbull will be in the squad come the summer. It's unfortunate for Turnbull that we have a very strong middle of the park,
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate thing. I know Turnbull's been playing a wee bit more advanced for Celtic, and he's been having a far better season than what Ryan Christie has. But, Christie's one of these players, and it probably is testament to Brendan Rodgers and the job that he did at Celtic when he got players like James Forrest, who was out of contract, remember, when Brendan Rodgers came in at Celtic. He got James Forrest, he got Ryan Christie back from Aberdeen, and he got these guys really playing very, very well. And, if Clarke can get the best out of Christie, there's a really, really good player in there. I know he's not shown it for Celtic this season. But yeah, in terms of Turnbull, I think he'll be in the squad. If he continues to play like what he has for Celtic, there's no way that he can't be in the squad. So I think that Guys like John Fleck are probably looking over their shoulders a wee bit and worrying a wee bit. But if you look at the squad, there's a few players that he probably just wants to take a look at, and I think he knows that Turnbull's good enough and could slot in there fairly easily.
Yeah, I think you said Fleck. I think McLean as well. He'll also be looking over his shoulder.
The thing is with McLean, as I mentioned earlier on, I think Clark does have a bit of loyalty, and I think McLean will be there because he likes McLean. He brings him on later on in a game just to see it out. He's sensible, keeps the ball really well, McLean, and obviously scored in both penalty shootouts as well, so you can trust him when it comes to that. So I think McLean will be there, but I think Fleck is probably on a sugary peg.
So if we take a look at the 3 games Scotland have this week, they're at home to Austria tomorrow night, away to Israel, and then at home to the Faroes. Starting with Austria, how many points do you think we'll pick up?
3. I think we'll win.
Solid.
I think we'll win, and I think we have to win because if you look at the last campaign, that's what let us down. Now Russia are obviously better than us, even though I think they're seeded maybe below us now. Mm-hmm. But, Russia are a strong team, and our failure to get anywhere close to Russia was really disappointing. We obviously took the lead against them at Hampden and then totally collapsed after that, and we got a bit of a doing over there. Our home games against the teams that are going to be our rivals are so important, so that means that we need to take 3 points against Austria at home. Otherwise, we need to go to Austria and win across there. So we need to beat them at some point, and I think we've got a better chance of doing it. And I fancy us on Thursday night, tomorrow night.
I'm expecting Scotland to go out and have a typical Scotland performance, give their all, but probably just come up short. I'm going with 1 point against Austria. So we move on to Israel, and it feels as if we've played Israel for like the 957th time in the last 3 years. We always seem to be drawn against them. I think they're in our Nations League group again this year as well, which is incredible. Yeah. I actually found out that before the last 2 years we'd only ever played them in a qualification group once, and that was back in the 80s. Now I think we're just permanently stuck to them. It's like our conjoined twins. Away over in Tel Aviv, I'm predicting we pick up a point. I don't think we'll get all 3.
Yeah, I think if we can take a point there, that's pretty decent. 3 points would be fantastic. But yeah, I think that'll be a draw as well because, they beat us last time across there. They beat us the time before when McLeish was in charge, even though that was one of the worst performances up there with the Kazakhstan one. So I think a point would be pretty decent because, again, I think Israel are capable of taking points off of other teams. So, I would take a point just now if you offered me.
And then finishing up with the Faroes at home. Now, we've been here with the Faroes before, the 2-each draw over there. But it's at Hampden. You can't see anything else than a comfortable Scottish win. I'm looking for a similar type performance to the performance we gave against San Marino, against Gibraltar. That's the sort of level I think the Faroes are at. I think we've got to put about 3 or 4 past them at least.
Yeah, I think we'll comfortably beat the Faroes. I think they are a wee bit better than the likes of San Marino and teams like that. I think they might even be in the 5th pot as opposed to the 6th pot. So I'm not sure about that though. But I think they've had a few decent results at home over the last wee while for Faroese standards. But yeah, we should be sweeping aside Faroes. If we want to qualify for major tournaments, we need to take care of the Faroes at home, and I'm pretty sure that we'll do that.
So I'm going for us to pick up 5 points, and you've got us to pick up 7.
Yes.
If we pick up 5 or 7, is that a good enough start for this campaign?
5, no. 7, yes.
Okay, so let's hope that you're right then. Taking a look at England's group, I mean, England just always seem to have a pretty easy group. They're going to be playing their hardest opposition in the group in Poland at home in the last game. First of all, they're at home to San Marino. That's 3 points in the bag, that one, isn't it?
Unfortunately, you would have to say that is 3 points comfortably in the bag for England. I wouldn't imagine they would have too much bother against San Marino, I should say. As much as I would love it. But I can't see that happening. So yeah, 3 points to England there.
Yeah, and I mean, this is games that as a Scotland fan, it's worth keeping an eye on because there's no other friendlies set up between now and the Euros. So this will be kind of the chance to see where England are at their weakest before we face them at Wembley. They go away to Albania after that. Again, I think that's 3 points in the bag there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will be tougher than San Marino at home, obviously, but I think, yeah, England over the past, 4 or 5 tournaments now are just a qualifying machine, and they just they churn out the results when it comes to qualifying. So, yeah, I would imagine that'll be 3 points as well.
And they wrap up at home to Poland. I'm being quite optimistic here. I think Poland could get something though.
Yeah, Poland are obviously a decent side. Lewandowski up front, always a danger. And I think Poland obviously love playing England as well. There is a wee bit of history there. So I think, I'd fancy the Poles for a point there. That's probably an optimistic hat on though, because it wouldn't surprise me if England, comfortably sweep them aside as well.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So 7 points, potentially out of 9. They'll qualify. It's like the Eurovision. They're almost guaranteed a direct entry straight into the finals. I think they'll have no problem there. What will be interesting is to see who they pick in their squad, look at what their weaknesses are, and see what we can maybe exploit when we get down to Hampden in the summer. Yeah,
I don't think England are that good, to be perfectly honest with you. I think they're obviously better than us. But you're looking at your top nations. You look at France. You look at not so much Germany now, but Italy were fantastic in the qualifying stages. You've got Holland as well, who were brilliant, and you've got that in Portugal, who of course are the holders. You've got that sort of top tier nations, I think, and England are below that. You saw that in the World Cup. They got to the semi-finals, which was obviously great for them, and they played Croatia, and Croatia mopped them up in the semi-finals, and that was after Croatia having 2 really difficult matches before that as well. I just think England lack. I think defensively they don't look very good. I'm not sold on guys like Rice in the midfield as well. I think going forward, obviously Sterling, Kane are class acts, but again, are they as good as what England think they are? I'm not entirely sure.
For me, it's always been Harry Maguire. I think Harry Maguire's the guy that you can get at. For me, his transfer fee was calculated by the size of his forehead. It wasn't on his ability. I don't think he's very good at all. So, as you said, defensively, I think that you can have a go at them. We've seen what happened when we played them at Hampden a couple of years ago. It'll be a one-off game pretty much. Anything can happen, and let's see what happens over the next few days. Now, this is something that's always exciting, is when a couple of the home nations are drawn in the same group, and we have that here with Wales and Northern Ireland, both in a group with Belgium, Czech Republic and Italy. That's a group of death, that. Wales start away to Belgium. As much as they're the Gareth Bale machine, I just can't see them picking anything up there.
Nah, Belgium, I'll sweep them aside, and that's a horrible, horrible group. I think that and I think Northern Ireland are on a downwards trajectory as well. Not only because they've got Baraclough as their manager, but because a lot of their players are getting to the end of their career. Yep. And they've had an amazing run over the past 2 or 3 tournaments and qualifying tournaments. Obviously nearly qualified for the World Cup. They're beat by Switzerland in the playoffs under Michael O'Neill. But I think they're coming to the end. And again, there's only so much that Wales can rely on Bale. Although he does look like he can be bothered when he plays for Wales. So I guess that's something.
They've got a friendly against Mexico. I'm not even going to count that. I reckon they'll get maybe a draw out that game. That'll be one that they'll test a few players in before wrapping up with a home tie against the Czech Republic. That's the kind of game that Wales will probably pick up the 3 points in, I'd say. Yeah,
they've got every chance. I think Wales are, I struggle to put my support behind any of the home nations apart from Scotland, to be perfectly honest with you. I'd rather they all got pumped and didn't qualify apart from us. I think you're right. I think it's one of those games that they might grind out at home, a Bale special from 45 yards or something. And again, Czech Republic, it'll be interesting to see them because obviously they're in our group ahead of the Euros as well.
Yeah, and for anyone that is tuning in from Northern Ireland, you're facing Italy away. You've got a home friendly against the USA, then a home tie against Belgium. I think that's 3 defeats. I'm really sorry to say.
I just wouldn't turn up. Didn't bother.
Maybe take up a new sport over the next week. We're sorry about that. So, who's going to qualify out the 4 home nations? Can Scotland and England do it?
I think England will qualify. I think we have a chance. Because, as I say, I think our group is pretty decent. You've got Denmark as the top seeds, which were the top seeds that you were wanting. Even though they're a decent side, they're not going to blow your socks off like a Belgium or anything like that. And then you've got Austria, and it's going to come down to the Austria games, which is why I think tomorrow night is so important that we need to pick up 3 points. And yeah, it's going to come down to that. It's going to be close. If we can get into the playoffs, we've got a chance. As you've seen against Serbia, we went across to Serbia, and people forget we were by far the better team that night as well.
Yeah,
we pulled them off the park. And they got their equaliser in the last minute or whenever it was. But so we are capable of going and beating teams of that level. And if we get a good draw in the playoffs and we meet a Serbia or a team of that ilk, I think that's the best we can hope for. I do think that maybe winning the sections will be a bit of a stretch for us.
And it's a good segue talking about Serbia, because Highland Paddy's been coming in wanting us to talk about the Republic of Ireland. And if you take a look at, in fact, he said the man with the face hair. That's a nice description for you, Stephen. Yeah. We take a look at Ireland's group. They face Azerbaijan, Luxembourg, Portugal and Serbia. Now, I think if you finish top, you're through. If you finish second, you're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Normally, you'd say it's a shootout between Ireland and Serbia, but I think they will probably struggle. They've been on a bit of a downward trajectory over the last few years. They
have, and obviously Stephen Kenny, former Dunfermline manager, now in charge as well. It's weird with Stephen Kenny because when he was in charge at Dunfermline, it's probably one of the best times and some of my fondest memories of supporting Dunfermline, because we'd been honking the entire season. We appointed Kenny, our honking run continued, and then we went on this amazing run towards the end of the season where we won something like 7 out of 8 matches and gave us a chance of staying up. And the momentum that we managed to create and that he created during that time was phenomenal. And it went down to the last day of the season. We got relegated up at Inverness, so that was a fun bus journey back down the road. But we managed to get to the cup final that season as well. We beat Hibs in the semi-final after a replay, and then Celtic won the final. Jean-Pierre Doumbé scoring the goal, which is a pub quiz question if ever I heard one. But I think that time under Stephen Kenny was actually amazing. It was the momentum was fantastic. I remember we played St Mirren on a Monday night, and it was live on Setanta, and it was one of the last games at Love Street as well. Mm-hmm. So it was rammed. There must have been about 11,000, 12,000. Dunfermline brought through something like 3,000 fans on a Monday night to St Mirren, and we won 1-0. Tam McManus scored, and It was one of these matches that I'll just always remember. I was in 6th year at school. We got the bus through, and yeah, it was a great time. However, the following season, after we got relegated, we got beat in consecutive weeks by Stirling Albion, Livingston, and Hamilton, and it was 3-4 and 5-0, and that was cheerio for Stephen Kenny. So it didn't end well for him at Dunfermline. There was problems behind the scenes and stuff at that point as well, but. I can only think that I don't think he's quite cut out for international management, given what I've seen with my own eyes at Dunfermline.
Well, Highland Paddy, I'm sure he'll be watching closely tonight as Ireland are playing Serbia. You can let us know next week if Stephen's prediction has came true, and we'll be able to see if Stephen Kenny's the man to lead the Republic forward to the Euros. But moving on, a big thank you to everyone who has tuned in and is watching us right now. This is a part of the show that we do with all the guests that come on here. And this is the Dream Football Dinner Party. Now, it gets towards lunchtime. It's getting there. The bellies are rumbling. So the first thing I have to ask is, what are you going to put out for your guests to come over?
I was thinking about this last night because I do actually like cooking. When I moved through to Glasgow about 10 years ago, I couldn't cook. But I moved into a flat myself. and my first wage was so terrible and I was so skint that I couldn't go out at weekends, especially once I got to the end of the month. So I basically taught myself to cook. So I managed to get like a few good dishes done, like curries, great, chili, bolognese, stuff like that. But I'd probably make some form of Italian dish. So I do an amazing sort of prawn linguine. So I think that would be my main dish. Do you want starters and pudding as well?
Well, I mean, Alison Conroy, when she was on a couple of weeks ago, set the bar having the 3-course. So it might just be a Clyde thing that you do the 3 courses. I'm okay with that.
Listen, I love my food, and I am always up for a 3-course. So starter, if we're keeping on the Italian theme, I suppose, make a mean bruschetta as well. Brilliant. So, and for a pudding, it would have to be tiramisu, just the god of puddings. So that's my 3 courses. In terms of my 4 guests, so I had to clarify with you the other night because I asked if it was football guests only. So I'm going to stick with football guests.
Okay.
And there are a few ones that... so, first of all, I've always been a massive fan of Italian football. I've fallen away over the past couple of years because it's on Premier Sports, and quite frankly, I pay enough to watch football. So...
it's all right. The police aren't listening in. We'll sort you out with an IPTV deal. We'll get you that sorted.
So I've fallen away in the past couple of years, but I come from the generation of Saturday morning Football Italia Gazzetta with James Richardson.
Yep.
So my first guest would be James Richardson from Football Italia.
Good choice.
I think a really, really interesting guy. And he's popped up on BT Sport. He does the goal show, the Champions League goal show, of course.
Fantastic show. Fantastic show.
He's a fantastic presenter, and he's just got a really, really good way and good delivery. Like I really admire him as a TV presenter, and I know he does the podcasts and stuff as well, the Total Football podcast and stuff like that. So I think he also does World's Strongest Man, which is an absolute that's a Christmas classic every single Christmas.
Yep.
There is the World's Strongest Man on. So I think James, just to get his stories from Football Italia and working with Gaza back in the day, absolutely brilliant. And the stuff about World's Strongest Man, just great. I think he's a really, really interesting guy. Secondly, I'm going to indulge myself and go with David Marshall, the hero of Scotland over the last 6 months. I've seen interviews with David Marshall. I don't think he's a particularly interesting guy to listen to. But I think, again, he's had such an interesting career. If you think back to when he made his debut for Celtic, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, was against Barcelona.
Yep.
And then I think the following match was a match against Rangers, and he was man of the match in both games. Played for so long down south, played in the Premier League with Hull, played with Cardiff as well, obviously, and all of a sudden, almost a bit from nowhere, because he was a bit like, David Marshall's there, he's a decent goalkeeper, but he's getting on about, he has been propelled to this national hero status for saving the penalty against Serda and Mitrovic. So I think David Marshall has to be in there. Again, I think I'd be able to get some interesting stories out of David Marshall, so he is guest number 2. Keeping with the Italian theme, the third person I would like to have as my dinner guest would be Carlo Ancelotti, because I think he is the coolest manager on the planet. I just think he just oozes coolness. He's at Everton. I don't care much for Premier League football, but I do really like Carlo Ancelotti, and I just think some of the stories that I've read about him over the years about the players, just absolutely loving him. Like when he was at Chelsea, when he was at Bayern Munich as well. I know, although when he went into Bayern Munich, I did read the stories about his training just being so rubbish compared with Pep's, because he was just like, just play 5-a-sides and we'll call it quits for lunch. That's the sort of manager that I would like to play for, basically. And I think When he was at Chelsea as well, and he managed to win the league, and then was sacked the following season in true Chelsea style. I think they probably, along with the fans being disappointed, I think the Italian restaurants in London, their profits took a nosedive because I think he was eating them out of house and home. So Carlo Ancelotti again, and that's just his managerial career. Obviously, he's fantastic playing career as well. Would be really interesting to get into. And again, indulge me, as a Dunfermline fan, I think there's only one person that I would like to round off my dinner guest list, and that would be Jock Stein, who obviously took over Dunfermline in 1961, kept us up, kept us from relegation, and then went on to win the Scottish Cup. Which is just incredible, and set us off on our most successful period in our history in the 60s, where we should have won the league in 1965, got to the cup final, got beat by Celtic as well, could have had a double, and then of course in 1968 won the Scottish Cup against Hearts. Jock Stein was the catalyst for that, and then he went on to have a no bad career after Dunfermline as well, you could say.
He'd done a couple of things here and there. I think he picked up the old European Cup or something like that. But
he did all right.
Aye. But he'll always be remembered for his time at Dunfermline, I'm sure.
Of course. Yeah.
That's a really interesting quartet you've got there. You've got the sort of journalistic side of James Richardson, the managerial brains of Carlo Ancelotti and Jock Stein. That would be such an interesting one. I can just see them facing each other, talking away about it the whole time, and David Marshall just kind of sitting there, just enjoying things.
Me and David Marshall just enjoying it. That's what I'm bringing him along for, basically.
I'm just picturing you sitting next to him like that. So, what was going through your head when you saved the penalty? And he's like, "Come on, Stephen, you've asked me this 50 times already." I know, just tell me again. But
I mean, it's just one of these things. I can't put into words how happy I was that night. Even though the next day I was severely hungover, and I was on the radio, and Gary was asking me just some of your feelings, and I'm just like, I'm just really happy. I can't put it any more simply than that. I was so happy, and David Marshall is the reason for that.
And it is a 3-course meal of bruschetta, prawn linguine and tiramisu. And Anthony Patrick Aitken comes back in saying, a bra roast chicken on your Instagram. Are you posting food pics?
Oh, aye. I love the food pics on my Instagram at Stephen Milstein with a VMILL. Now you follow, and it's my girlfriend's actually a very good cook and chef and baker, actually, which is dangerous for me because I would just eat everything. So I need to discipline myself. But I love the roast chicken. Roast chicken on a Sunday is almost a go-to every single week.
Oh, definitely. I love a Sunday roast. I love it. It's actually a good segue as we you're just touching on your girlfriend there. We'll talk about the female game. We are kind of running tight on time, so we'll give this a quick talk through. It is the Women's Super League down south. They've just signed a new deal where basically 53 games a season will be shown across BBC and Sky. It's worth £7 million a year. And Sky Sports have promised to give it the full Sky Sports treatment, which probably means that they'll have Chris Boyd as part of the commentary team somewhere. And it'll jump about channels depending on what else is to be shown. Yeah. But, I mean, taking the jokes out of it, fantastic for the women's game. It's only going to help the development going forward. Will you try and catch some of the games that will be on the free-to-air TV?
Probably not, if I'm being honest. As I say, I'm not a huge fan of English football. It doesn't really do it for me. And the women's game, I like to see Scotland do well. Obviously, it was great to see them at the major tournament a couple of years ago. That was fantastic, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm a massive supporter of women's football. Not that I'm against it in any way, of course. As you say, it's fantastic for the game down south. There's going to be more money being put into. One thing that it does put into perspective as well, £7-8 million a year. And then you look at the TV deal in Scotland for the Championship, which is worth £350,000 a season, and the Championship in Scotland is obviously of far more interest because it will get more viewers, it gets more attendance, and I think that's a damning indictment on the SPFL and how they sell our game, to be perfectly honest with you. If that's the paltry deal that they managed to come up with compared with what the Women's League down south has managed to negotiate.
Yeah, and it's not even a kind of insult to the women's game, it's an insult to the SPFL and the fact that they've not been able to promote the game the way that the FA down south have managed to do it for the women's game. And it's fantastic for them. I mean, I'd probably say if there's nothing else on TV, I'll give it a watch. And it's great. I'm sure for a lot of young females out there, they'll be able to develop new role models and will be able to bring the game forward.
But you're totally right. That's the thing. Giving it more coverage and giving it more airtime is only going to be a good thing, and it will encourage more young girls to get into the game. And that's what it's all about, because women's football will not improve unless there are more people taking part in it, and standards will constantly get driven up. Because you've got to remember that, you know, the men's game has a 50 or 60 year head start on the women's game, because it was banned in the UK effectively for so long. So, it is good to see it getting coverage, and the more young girls that can get involved in the game, the better, I suppose.
Yeah, and we're hoping to have someone on from the WSL over the next few weeks once the season wraps up. One of the Scotland national team members, so look out for that over the next couple of weeks on the Football Insomniac. But Stephen, it's been fantastic having you on, and we can't finish up without taking a look back at your career so far. You mentioned you've got the role at Dunfermline Athletic. What is it that you actually do?
So basically, if there's any big signing or any big announcement or anything like that, they get me in to interview them. Basically, that's basically what it is. I also host the Player of the Year awards every year. So that's a bit of fun as well. And you know, I do it because nothing excites me more than going to talk to the Dunfermline manager, you know, quite frankly. No offence, Colin, but I think... but, you know what I mean? I'm still a supporter of Dunfermline, and I've interviewed countless people on the radio, famous faces, from Ed Sheeran to Andy Murray, and I still get more nervous going to speak to the Dunfermline manager than I do any of them. So, you know, it's just one of those things that's just the way my mind works.
And so how did that actually come about then? How did you get involved at Dunfermline?
They obviously... they had me on the breakfast show at Capital, and they had me talking about Dunfermline and stuff like that, and they just said, you want to come in for a meet and see if there's anything we can do together. And then I would go in and I would do the weekly press conference that would go out on social media, just to add a little bit of, I guess, professionalism to the output of the club. Because, I mean, what a lot of people don't realise, I think, with clubs the size of Dunfermline, you know, they only have 3 or 4 full-time members of staff outside the football bit. You know, and I was reading recently that I think it's in Motherwell, I've got 20 odd. You know, and I'm just like, what do they do? You know, because the guys at Dunfermline work so hard, and I'm going in, and it's on a voluntary basis that I do it, and I do it because I want to, and I love doing it. I just wanted to go and help out and sort of add my expertise into what they already had there.
And you mentioned about the role on the Capital Breakfast Show. That's where a lot of people will probably have first heard of you. You got that coming straight out of university. That's unheard of these days. How did that come about?
I mean, it's yes and no to that question, because it was straight out of university, but for the 4 years I was at university, I was working at a radio station as well. So basically, by the time I graduated, I had 4 years' experience, which was something I did off my own back. I went to work at Kingdom FM, which is the local radio station in Fife, local commercial radio station. They were great. Let me do the sports reports. Then I got a wee bit on the breakfast show there. You know, started reading the news, just barely did everything. And that set me up for when I basically just applied for a job at Capital to be the breakfast newsreader. Got it. And then it just sort of all blossomed from there, and it was 7.5 years I did the breakfast show for, which was amazing. But I'm really happy not to be getting up in the middle of the night anymore.
Well, that was the bit I was just about to bring up. So obviously, we knew about your time at Kingdom. but that kind of comes part and parcel with the time that you spent at university. University of Stirling, wasn't it, that you graduated from? There's a lot of kind of young journalists that tune in, and there's a couple of them here on A State of Mind themselves. What would you encourage them to do if they were wanting to get into that sort of sports journalist kind of thing? Because you obviously got the breakthrough at Kingdom FM, but was that difficult to come about, or was it just a case of get the name out there and eventually someone will kind of bring you in?
I started off doing stuff for their street team, so their sort of PR team effectively, and I hated it. So I went and spoke to the news editor and just said, listen, I'm about to begin a degree in journalism and sport at university. Is there anything that you like? Can I do anything? Can I help out in any way? And she was like, we need somebody to do the sports news. That was it. And like it's, I wish it was more complicated than that. But yeah, it's just putting yourself out there. And unfortunately, that was 2007 that happened. Radio has changed considerably since then, and there are far fewer opportunities to do that. But there has been the massive rise in guys like yourself and the State of Mind sort of output. You've got obviously the club's internal TV channels and media, which is a chance to get your hand in there. So go to your local club, offer to help out, offer to do the interview after the match or in the press conference or whatever it is, and you'll make loads of mistakes. That's the thing as well. That's the best piece of advice. I still make mistakes on a daily basis. Anyone who hears me on the radio hears me make mistakes on a daily basis. So, like, once you get over the fact that you're going to make mistakes, things become a lot easier, and then you don't worry about it so much, and therefore you make fewer mistakes. So get out there, get into club media, get into guys like yourself, and still try local radio stations, of course. But things are a little bit different from when I was coming through. It was one of these things that just sort of happened for me. I do remember talking to Rob McLean once, and he was originally at North Sound in Aberdeen. That's how he started out, and he was a journalist. He read the news like what I did, and this was back in, I think it was 1981, 1982, and the commentator, they used to have all the Aberdeen games on North Sound. They used to do the live commentaries. The commentator had left to go to the BBC or something, so they had a meeting and they were like, does anyone fancy being the main commentator for the Aberdeen games next season? And Rob McLean was the only person to put his hand up, so he got the job. And I was like, that's mental. Like, you just put your hand up and you just get a job. And that's even more wild back in the day, what it was like. And that season, Aberdeen won the Cup Winners' Cup. So there you go. That makes
it just shows you, if you don't ask, you don't get. That's the kind of motto here. And just before we wrap up, because we've now been on just over an hour now, I feel as if it's flew by. But you did 7 years on the Capital Breakfast Show, working alongside Des Clark and Amy Irons. They then moved on to Clyde One, and you're working across the Bauer network in Scotland as well on the big Saturday football show alongside you and Cameron. What's Ewan like to work alongside?
I get asked this more than any other question. What is Ewan Cameron like? And I would love to sit here and tell you that he's a horrible person and he's a pain in the backside. And he is a wee bit of a pain in the backside sometimes. But he's genuinely one of the nicest guys that I've ever met. And I couldn't have been more wrong about him because before I met him, I just thought, oh God, that guy's a fud. And just like, I was totally like that. And I've spoken to him about this, and I'm like, I couldn't have got you more wrong. Like, before all of this, if we were having drinks at the radio station or whatever, I would seek out Ewan to go and speak to him because he's good chat. He's got so many stories, and he's just a lovely, lovely guy. And I think he was obviously really successful with the Real Football phone-in back in the day. Awards, Ewan and Ruffy, which was huge. I think he sees this as, the next step. He missed that a wee bit, and to get Ewan on board was fantastic. And then obviously I'm working during the week with Gary Spence as well, who was at Capital before. So it's a sort of Capital reunited on drive time on Clyde Forth and all the rest of the stations. So it's just, I'm really enjoying myself now, and it's just, it's... as long as I can keep doing this, it'll save me getting a real job. That's what I'm thinking to myself.
So one final question before we wrap up then today. Now, obviously, you've got the show with Ewan, you're working with Gary on Drive Time. What's the goal? What do you want to do over the next couple of years? What do you see? Do you want to have like your own show across the Bauer network? Do you want to? What's the kind of goal?
I'm a big believer in strength in numbers, and Gary would say the same thing, and I'm sure Ewan would say the same thing. I'm actually covering solo this week for Gary because he's off. He's been unwell, so the show isn't the same without Gary. And when I'm off, the show isn't the same without me. So it's one of these things where if you work in tandem, it's I think you get a better show. I think two people's better than one. It's quite difficult to host a radio show yourself solo because you're almost talking to yourself, and it's one of these weird things that you have to get your head around. But I can do it, and it's good. But it's working with both Gary and working with Ewan is fantastic. As for the next few years, if somebody told me in 10 years' time if I'd be still on Drive Time with Gary and still doing the Saturday football show with Ewan, I would snap your hand off for it because I'm really enjoying it at the moment, and it's great to get a lie in every day doing the Drive Time show. It's so huge, it's a syndicated show that goes across the whole of Scotland, it's coast to coast, and we want to make it the best show in the country and make it the best show in the country. That's the aim, and the same with the Saturday football show as well. We're not on Clyde, but we're on the rest of the network, and we want to make it as big as possible. Do some just have some fun and have a laugh. That's the most important thing.
And I think we've managed to do that today, and it's been fantastic having you on the Football Insomniac. And thank you to everyone who else has been watching us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Periscope. You'll be able to watch it again on YouTube. Please give us a subscribe. We've just actually overtaken Aberdeen Football Club for the amount of subscriptions on YouTube, which is incredible. We only really started this about a year ago. So give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. Stephen, it's been amazing having you on today. Next week, I'm going to be joined by the world's youngest international football coach. Now, if you haven't heard about this before, check it out. He coached the Micronesian side, Pohnpei, and that's all I'm going to tell you about. So go and check that out. Join us next Wednesday when I'll be joined by the Pohnpei national manager. But Stephen, check him out on Drive Time across the Bauer network. From 4 o'clock today, you'll find them on Facebook and on Instagram. We'll be back next Wednesday. A Celtic State of Mind starts at 12:30 on this channel. But until then, take care and stay safe.